Samurai Success community, welcome back to the Scroll. I am here with CEO David Olcott. How are you, sir?
Good, sir. How are you doing?
Ah,
Somebody's birthday this week.
yeah, it was my birthday. I got to have a coaching session with your good self. Honestly, it was such a wonderful opportunity for me just to sit back and experience all the great things that I've been doing on the journey with you, and going through my I ams and going through this process. It was nice just to be able to sit back and observe the universe lovingly remind me of all these things. It was great. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you, and to the audience, I know you don't need this from me, man, but the work you've done over the last year has been exceptional. This is hard work. That's why most people don't do it, but then they don't get to live the extraordinary lives that we're talking about conceptually, finally in part of my life, I remember I wasn't living that as well. And I was like, that's enough. I'm done with this. Beautiful quote. You get out of life what you tolerate. I was like, no more. And I see you on the same path, man. And I really hope for the community that, yes, it's painful to get to that place, but it's also the most empowering element and moment you're going to have in your life, because then it's like no more putting the past behind me. I'm moving forward. I want to live this extraordinary life with the gifts I've been given.
Yeah, well, thank you for being my coach and mentor and guide. It's it's been a journey, mate. I got nothing more to say. Just 'cause-
All smooth and easy, right?
yeah, yeah, 100%. And yeah, it's a wonderful journey, and I hope it serves as an encouragement for people to go, oh, what are they talking about? Let's just come and find out what they're on about, because I've been around in this personal development world a few years, and it's a whole new level of depth, and yeah, it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful. Today we're talking about a well-known formula in the personal development, spiritual development community. Um, but I think the world has it slightly misinterpreted. So I'd love to go through this well-known concept. Maybe it's not well known. The be, do, have formula. For those in our community that maybe haven't heard that, maybe they're hearing that for the first time. What is the be, do, have formula?
So sometimes it's a little easier to understand a new concept by referring back to the old concept, right? Or the concept we're actually doing, we may not even be aware of, Ryan. And that formula is really the do, have, be strategy, right? That's where most of us are living this life. And that's where I was living my life in the past. And basically, the formula says, I have to do this work so that I can have money, so I can be successful. Now that formula works. It just creates a different pathway, a different destiny, a different experience. So it works. Yet the masters have been teaching the other strategy, and let me get as clear as I can, and passionate about this. This strategy called the be, do, have strategy, which is the masters have been teaching, is a different sequence, and sequencing in this place makes a huge difference.
Mm.
Sequencing makes the difference. So imagine then, you're doing this to be able to have this, to be able to become this. That's something that's just ongoing. You're never going to get to that finally sense of beingness, because there's always this place of yearning and continuous search, and it works. And you see a lot of people on this path. Now reversing it to the be, do, have strategy is, hey, I'm going to choose who I'm going to be, my emotional state before going into a situation. What are my outcomes before I go into a situation? And then I'm going to do the work based upon that state of beingness. And the havingness, the experience of it completely changes. So let me give you an example. I didn't used to like to read. As a matter of fact, I used to hate to read. That's honest. And you could not get me to get a book in my hand. I don't care how powerful it was. And yet I ran into this gentleman named Brian Tracy, and was in the seminar business, that kind of stuff. And gosh, man, I don't know what that man did to me, but being in his programs multiple times, meeting him, talking to him, having lunch with him, if you will, he pounded this idea that if you're not reading, you're falling behind. And it didn't change anything, right? It wasn't changing my programming. So when I found this technology and I started doing the work and I changed my programming, reading is now something I love. As a matter of fact, you can't find me without a book, right? If I'm at a restaurant, if I'm out, if I'm always have a book in the car. There's always on my motorcycle. There's always a book in my hands. And with that amount of knowledge has been phenomenal. But let's imagine I go in there and I'm like, oh, I got to read this book. So it's a behavior I know I have to do. And I go in with an attitude of, okay, I'll do it. I'll read this. Fine, kind of stuff. Well, it's funny because, we're laughing about it, but that's exactly how I was doing other things in my life. And I think if the audience was being honest, you're going to find you're doing the similar thing where you're going with an attitude that's not healthy for the doingness you're doing. And that's that thing, whatever emotional state you choose, your identity, the language of emotions, things you were choosing in advance are affecting the doingness, which is having the effect on the experience. And you're in control of all of it.
Yeah.
You have the power to be able to take this back. So moving now into this be, do, have strategy, which is a sacred technology. I really want to be clear. As many YouTube channels that are out there and all this social media says this stuff doesn't work. Yes, it does. You just have to know how to work it.
That first description sounds like my wife with her gratitude list. Like, I managed to find her one Christmas. It was a gratitude journal that just says, "Fine, I'm grateful."
That's perfect.
Yeah. Adds a bit of humor to it, which is, I think, a frequency raiser. But I listen to your voice all the time, and I have the joys of listening back to your podcast appearances. And I was listening to one recently, which is talking about this life that you're living down in the Florida Keys, and like really living up the life. And I imagine like there was a lot of doing and having in your world. At what point did you really reconcile this idea of be, do, have? Was there a moment where that concept really sunk into your awareness?
Yeah, as soon as the concept really sinks in, I'll let you know. But because I'm still working on it, right? This is a tough thing for our brains to get around. But my first awareness became around the true change of it and really going, okay, I've had enough. Really started in my mid 20s. And I was really looking for that other thing because I thought I was doing all the great stuff to create this beingness later on. And I wasn't ever getting to the beingness. As a matter of fact, my beingness was depressed and sad and upset and angry. That's the best word, Ryan. I was angry. That was like, this can't be the way. There's got to be another alternative. And that's what put me on the path. And then, of course, reading a book called Conversations with God brought it to my attention. And then, well, there's that reading part again that we talked about, right? Whereas if I hadn't chosen to fall in love with reading, change my programming about how essential that was, I would never be at this level. Because in this physical plane, there's certain behaviors you have to be willing to do. And by the way, whenever I say the word behavior, just imagine as the do part of the formula, right? All behaviors are doing this. Decisions are behaviors of doing this, right? We talk about it in the book. So it's just about all these things finally come together and really get to a place of, okay, I've had enough. Let's move into this next pathway.
Yeah, so there are people that have lived the life with the strategy of do, have, be. And, the one thing we hear time and time again, burnout, unfulfillment, a real talk of a loss of identity. And I guess what we want to be here right now is a source of encouragement and a reminder. And maybe let's just start with this clarity, because many people think, oh, I've got a new strategy, be, do. If I just do these things, I'll have all that I want. Let's do the secret. One of the things you've taught me is that the universe is very specific with what it provides, and it's not always what we think or what we're told. Maybe you can enlighten us. What does the universe really provide us?
So the reference that you and I are having is that there's a book called The Secret, and it's sold over 35 million copies. I mean, it's a blockbuster. There's no doubt about it. Yet missing, and by the way, if you've ever applied the information there, you're going to be unfulfilled because there's a big part missing in there. Basically, what it says, and again, I'm paraphrasing, is that the universe is this big giant catalog, and as long as I think about this stuff that I want to do and I create my frequency of thinking about it, I'm going to attract that thing. So if I want a red Corvette, all I have to do is sit back, think, and then boom, all of a sudden the universe provides from its catalog of universal opportunities, right? That it brings the red Corvette to you. That has not been my experience. And when talking to the masters who are on this planet about how the attractor factor really works, they agree that that's not really how it works. As a matter of fact, it would actually violate one of the core principles of why you're here as a soul. Because as a soul, the answer to the great age old question, why am I here? From a soul perspective, the masters have said this over and over again. You are here to have an experience of that who you say you are. Now, that's profound. If you just take a moment and breathe that in like you did just so beautifully, you understand, because you and I have been working toward this goal for quite some time. The challenge is that we get this place that says, well, if I think about it and then I just attract this Corvette, I didn't have the experience of earning the Corvette, knowing who I am in the opportunity given to me. And let me be as clear as I can. The universe doesn't provide the thing. It provides the opportunity for the experience of the thing. What you do with that experience is whether that thing actually manifests in your life long term. And that is what the empowering part of this self-help, genre is supposed to be about, is understanding that core concept. It's not about attracting the thing. It's about attracting the opportunity for the experience of the thing. And with that mindset, you really hear what I'm saying about this. It's a game changer.
The thing that's coming to me as you're speaking is is the irony then, if I'm doing my being and my doing, and let's just say I'm praying for patience, to be more patient. Well, then the universe is going to lovingly send me more opportunities to be patient. Isn't that an irony? And I guess if we don't have an awareness of this sacred technology, we may be inviting or invoking the law of contrast.
Yeah, well, you can't turn off the law of contrast. So you're always invoking, you're always attracting it. It's just being conscious of it or unconscious of it, really, that you and I have spoken about, right? So now we're consciously going. As soon as you announce to the universe who you say you are, the universe has a primary job, and it is relentless, Ryan, as you and I both know. It loves us so much that as soon as you announce to the universe that what you say you are, the universe's job is to throw everything at you that you are not. Now, what the hell is this guy talking about? In order to have an experience of something, its opposite must exist. If I want to know myself as tall, then if everybody was my height, everybody was the same height in the entire world, and I walked around the entire world, I would not experience myself as tall or short or thin or fat or handsome or ugly, or all these things exist simultaneously in this path. And when you say who you are, it actually invokes that so that you can have an experience. The good news is that as you get to a level of mastery, the universe knows you. You cannot lie to it as much as we'd like to. We can lie to each other, fool each other, but the universe, you can't. The universe knows when you no longer need that lesson. When you are truly clear about who you are, the invoking of the contrast, it still happens. It just has less effect on you because you don't need that any longer. Why would the universe keep sending you a lesson that you know you have? It knows you have. Remember, the universe is as much of a teacher to us as it is a student to us. Every single day and every single behavior you do, every single thought you have, you are teaching the universe what lessons to send you. So keep that in mind as you go through the be, do, have strategy, because this technology is how to structure this in a way that gives the brain meaning. It goes, I have control of this. I have influence. I can manage this.
Yeah, the understanding that you helped me gain really made an impact when I was running the half marathon. So I ran a half marathon a couple of months ago after 3 days of fasting, and my wife was really worried. She thought I was going to pass out. She thought I was, and the law of contrast was beautiful because there was some high performance athletes at the side of the road passing out. And I'm like, I'm using the law of contrast. That is not who I am. And it was a wonderful. And so thank you for that kind of teaching and the understanding, because without that, I'd have been like, oh no, if that's happening to them, then it'll definitely happen to me. And I chose to give it a different meaning, which was very empowering.
Yeah, it's funny because the body and mind worked so beautifully together. And if you had gotten bought into that, hey, there's a high professional athlete and they're failing, I'm going to have to fail. If you, it will manifest that opportunity for you to get that cramp that you weren't feeling 5 seconds ago, right? It'll show up, all of a sudden I can't breathe. Now I'm feeling your brain is so magnificent that it will create this opportunity for you to experience yourself as, I'm not prepared for this, or it prepares you for, I am prepared for this. You get to choose.
Wow. One of the things that pop culture manifestation talks about is, thoughts become things, and what we're talking about here is that it's not just thought alone. It's thoughts aligned with actions, the being and the doing. And one of the things that I know you talk so passionately about is that actually it's congruency that matters more than consciousness when it comes to manifestation. Now, I know there are many people that are hearing that for the first time. Break that down for us. What does that really mean?
So in this physical realm, remember where we're located, really important part. There's spiritual technology we can pull into this. Heaven on earth, by the way, is that concept. We're pulling spiritual energy into this place, and then we're using that spiritual energy to manifest things. So think about this. The power you have is you can take an idea, a thought, and you can turn it into a car. You can turn it into a bicycle. You can turn it into this table, this desk, this computer, this video stuff that we're doing. Everything that's being manifested, we're pulling this stuff forth using this technology in our own version and vision of who we say we are. So having video conferencing, wow, that happened when? Right after COVID. COVID, accelerated our ability to do it, where COVID was a tragic thing for this stuff on our planet, yet it led to some really important things, because without it, video conferencing may not have evolved as far as it is. Again, this was just a thought in someone's head years ago, this video conferencing that we're doing right now. And just think about the future of what we're going to manifest. That's a really empowering thought that just says, wow, that's a pretty amazing gift we've been given.
What is it about congruency specifically that makes a difference to that attraction?
So as I was going down this path, especially the spiritual path, I was surrounded by a community that was, we've got to raise our consciousness. And by the way, why would you not think that that was accurate? And I did. So I was like looking for ways to be able to do the right things, not think bad things. Oh my gosh, Ryan, I was fighting myself so completely. It was exhausting.
Yeah.
I was always looking for, what's the right thing to do here? And my brain was like, well, do this. And I was like, no. And there was this battle going on within me. And I was like, man, that can't be the way this is. So raising my consciousness. And then, of course, this manifestation thing happened. And I ran this work by Dr. David Hawkins. And he's the gentleman who mapped out the consciousness map as we know it, from 0 to 1,000, right? And if you have not seen his work, please do this. Power versus Force is one of the great books to be able to start with. But the map of consciousness really awakened me to a very different understanding. And in his work, he's very clear that you have already chosen your consciousness level from 0 to 1,000 before entering this body. And that's your max, because changing your consciousness in this physical plane gives you a very different experience. You've come here for a reason. And that consciousness level is set at that purpose, right? Even before coming in here. Now, that's a big statement. That's way down the rabbit hole. I get it. Yeah. But you've already set that. And he was very clear that we can only raise our consciousness by about 5 points in this physical realm. So we choose our consciousness level. We come in here. We can only raise it by 5. But here's the other thing he pointed out. You can lower it as far as you want. Okay. Not much of a balance there, because then we start talking about some of the amazing and tragic things that have happened on our planet. Because why have sometimes very powerful people use this for what we would call evil? And that's because they see the world from that level of consciousness. And that consciousness is the viewpoint, the lens of which they're seeing all the world at, which they can only raise that by 5%, but they can drop it all the way down to 0. And 0 has very different beliefs and values than someone at a level 500 or 700 or 1,000. Your soul is much more engaged. At 0, your ego is much more engaged.
Mm.
So understanding that I could only raise my conscious level by 5 points in this lifetime, I was like, well, I've been fighting and battling myself to raise my consciousness, doing the right thing. This doingness is second. It's be, do, have. And I was like, well, if it isn't my consciousness, the state of being that I want to raise, what else is it? And I just started looking at people, successful people, studying successful people, and right in front of my face. Now, it took me years to see it, but it was right there, Ryan, the whole time. And once I got myself out of the way, it was so clear. I was just like, oh my gosh, there it is. And the word isn't consciousness, it's congruence.
Mm.
So here's an amazing formula to really think about. Once you have created your identity, by the way, whether that's self created or created by others, it's still your identity. And that identity over time creates consistency. Consistency over time creates congruency. Congruency over time creates coherence. Coherence over time is a frequency. And that frequency is your focal point of attracting things into your life. So now you have not just be, do, have from a formula in this community, but you now have this congruence formula, if you will. Think about all the things we just said, consistency in there. How do people know you? Because when you show up all the time, you're consistent. You're oh, that's Ryan. Oh, that's Dave. I know that. You do one behavior that's out of alignment with that consistency, your feedback, your friends are going to give you some immediate feedback. Like, hey, I wasn't expecting their facial expressions or their vocalizations or something's going to be there. So you're constantly getting feedback from very close, well-meaning people, and sometimes not very well-meaning people, about your consistency factor. But that consistency factor over time creates that coherent or congruence that we're talking about. That congruence then leads to the next aspect of creating and attracting things into your life.
Mm. The participants that will be going through the Swords of Illumination group coaching starting next month will be going through this and many, many other secrets of the universe in great detail. But for people that are listening that are curious, what are your top 3 tips for manifesting anything that you want?
So goal setting is something we've already talked about in the last couple of months. And really part of the secret formula of there is just remembering what you already know, and it should be resonating with you. If it isn't, give us a call. We'll talk you through it. The big part about this is that really focusing on this idea of being consistent over time, right? Creating this coherence, this identity. So you set a goal, but if that goal is not aligned with who you say you are, whether that's been self-created or created by others, that goal, if it isn't in alignment with who you are, then you've just violated the be, do, have model, because goal setting and doing goals is a doingness, right? So right there is like, oh, there's the be, do, have strategy that just says, boom. Now, if I do the do, have, be strategy, goal setting makes sense to go first. But by simply seeing the sacred formula of be, do, have, then you recognize goal setting is the doing part to be able to create the havingness. So then what's missing in that situation is the beingness. The beingness is your identity. It is your value system. It is your mission and purpose. It is everything that we cover in the Swords of Illumination program, group, individual, and in the book. So to really understand your state of beingness, that's where you can get a lot more information from. Top 3 is make sure you're aligning everything you're doing with your identity, who you say you want to be. Great example of this. Imagine that I say I'm a world-class athlete and I sit on the couch over there and I eat Cheetos all day. That doingness is not congruent with your beingness, and it's going to create a different havingness. But when you take this identity of being this world-class athlete and you start eating healthy, train clean, you're really consistent with your rituals and everything else that goes along with being a professional athlete, then all of a sudden things change and manifest very differently.
I know we've not got time to explore it, but you've got multiple examples of applying this technology yourself from like competing at championship level ice hockey, I understand, and motorcycle riding. And yeah, you're the living embodiment of this formula and technology, which is why it gives you such authority and integrity when you share this stuff, because I know that you've lived and breathed it. There are there's one consistent thing that you've done on every single one of these calls, and you've always given an advanced kind of bonus tip. I know people are waiting for it. You're such a giver. For those that really have ears for what we're talking about, for those that are really understanding on a deep level what you're talking about, what's the little extra bonus tip that you have for them?
So the idea here is to really, the advanced level stuff is really about understanding first that this do have be strategy works. You're probably already applying that. Now it's about shifting and just simply write this down: be, do, have. And before going in, just this week, here's your advanced technique. In this week, just before you do everything, state who you're going to be before going into it. And I promise you, a remarkable thing is going to happen. You're going to have a very different, deeper experience than you've ever had before in your life. Now, well, Dave, what are you saying? I need to go scuba diving. I need to go dive with great white sharks. I need to go ride motorcycles and do race. I'm talking about loading the dishwasher, cleaning your house, washing your car. Just take a basic task that you do every single day: updating your calendar, updating whatever, writing an email. Choose your state of emotion that you're going to be before going into this. And you will find in a very advanced technology that's been available to you for the longest time. So the answer to this is, why did that spaghetti that my mom made was so delicious? And then I take the same recipe and I do the same recipe, and yet it doesn't taste the same way. What did she do differently? Now, every single kid knows, if you've ever heard this, is because mom put love in it. There it is. She was doing this out of just her heart, soul, and pouring love into that recipe, and it changes everything. You can follow the blueprints all you want. You can follow the recipe all you want. Your emotional frequency that you're imbuing, impregnating that doingness, changes everything.
People are feeling an emotional state right now. What should they do with that level of curiosity towards samurai success?
Well, the first thing I do is stay curious. That's a great first step. If you haven't grabbed the book, grab the audio. I know you're busy, but that technology has been written so that we can really change things. Now, if you're like me and you've just had enough of how the world has been going and we really want to change it, then we've got to step up. We've got to be involved in our own rescue. You got to take some action about this. You now know a source that you can come and get real answers from. You can go through a workshop. You can go through a process about really making this change. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it's expensive. Are you worth the investment? So the very first thing you need to be able to do is, if you finally had enough, you stop wanting to listen to all this stuff, and you really want to take the adventure, give us a call.
Fantastic. David, thank you. I know you've got some travels coming up, and we'll be back with the scroll next month.